Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome all of you to the May session of the WIRES webinar series, and we're really fortunate today to have with us one of the leaders from our nation's capital, Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who represents the 5th District of the state of Washington. And we're so pleased to have her here to share her thoughts with us on energy issues, and to the extent that she can focus on transmission issues in particular. Just by a little way of background, Representative McMorris Rodgers had previously served in the Washington State Legislature before joining the U.S. House of Representatives in 2004. She currently serves as the ranking member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And as I said, we're thrilled to have her here today. We have a pretty hard stop for her at 2:15 to accommodate her schedule. I will mention to the participants that we do have the ability for you to submit questions through the question function. And Representative McMorris Rodgers had graciously said that she would be willing to accept questions, and so please send them throughout the course of her remarks, and then I will have them and I can go over with her after she concludes that during our question portion. So without any further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to the Congresswoman, and we were anxious to hear what your thoughts are on energy issues, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you very much, Larry, and hi everyone. It's great to be able to connect with you virtually, although I'm extremely anxious to be able to see everyone in person. But I'm Cathy McMorris Rodgers, and I'm super excited to be the ranking member, the Republican leader on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about your priorities and your perspective on transmission in particular. But first, I thought I would just give you a few updates from the committee on energy, on reliability, on the security front. We've had a number of hearings on the Clean Future Act, which is the major bill that the majority is moving forward. It's almost 1,000 pages. It includes a lot of mandates, a lot of regulations to decarbonize our entire economy by 2050. For example, it federally mandates massive electrification, really on an unprecedented scale and pace. And I'm concerned it does not take into account the cost. Energy is so important to our national security and reliability, grid reliability, energy affordability. This is all foundational to America's global competitive edge. I continue to advocate for solutions to build more energy infrastructure by spurring innovation and private sector. Instead of rushing to green, I believe that we need to do it in a way that is going to really promote America's leadership and America's competitiveness. So that's why the Republicans on the Energy and Commerce Committee have moved forward proposed a bill. It's called the Securing Cleaner American Energy Act. All of our members have been involved in leading on real, workable, all of the above solutions to unleash energy innovation. I believe that it is more realistic, and it also would set up America for leading the world and exporting our technology, our innovation to others around the world. I have a lot of concerns about how the proposals from President Biden, the majority right now, would actually hurt energy reliability. I often like to look at California as an example, and I do not believe that this is the future that we want for the rest of the country. Right now in California, they are seeing their energy rates go up 7 times the rest of the country, and their energy reliability is poor. It's common to hear of blackouts now in the summer. And what we're seeing is that the state's dependence on weather-dependent renewables causes energy failures on a regular basis. So not only do you have a lack of reliability, but then you have a lack of energy affordability. And that is really hurting people and household budgets needed to pay for heat and electricity. So just like we've seen in California and New York, when you add in the push to to keep fossil in the ground and remove gas as a source of heating fuel, the costs only increase further. This is the 1-2 punch of electrical mandates that raises prices and undermines rewarding jobs in the energy sector. That's not the way to build prosperity. I believe that we should be pursuing more practical improvements in our energy and electricity systems to keep reliable, affordable delivery of energy and power at the center of our energy policy. And the best way that we can do this is unleashing innovation through regulatory and permitting reforms to the grid, to transmission lines, and to all of our energy systems. Grid diversity is also very important. While our country moves towards integrating renewables, integration must be achieved through diverse energy sources that includes nuclear, hydropower, natural gas, clean coal, and wind and solar. A resilient power grid is not a one-size-fits-all operation imposed by Washington, D.C., nor should it be. Obviously, with the colonial pipeline and the cyber attack, our energy infrastructure is top of mind. This cyber attack and the ripple effects that we're experiencing are sharp reminders of how deeply dependent we are on energy infrastructure every day. And it's so important that we're modernizing and protecting it. It's also important that we make sure DOE, as the sector-specific agency for energy, has the tools it needs to protect our infrastructure and prevent cyber attacks, including on pipelines and our grid. On energy and commerce, this committee has a rich history and culture of working together. That is my hope, that we'll be able to move forward on bipartisan bills that will address these issues. The former chairman of the committee, Fred Upton, is already leading on a bill to strengthen DOE's ability to respond to threats against pipelines and LNG facilities. Congressman Wahlberg is leading to elevate energy emergency and cyber responsibilities as a core function to DOE. Congressman Bob Latta has 2 bills. One encourages coordination between DOE and electric utilities, and the second creates a program under DOE to work with agencies, states, stakeholders to enhance security of our electric utilities. So with that, I'd really like to hear from you. I look forward to hearing your insights, better understanding what your priorities are as you see them. And so I'm happy to take some questions.
Well, great. And I'm going to, again, invite any of the participants who have any questions based on your comments to send them. And in the meantime, I have some questions. I will say, first of all, I was heartened to hear you emphasize both the importance of infrastructure and the relationship of jobs being associated with getting more infrastructure built. Actually, just today, Wires put out a report that talked about how transmission investment can be a driver for economic recovery, creating jobs, adding more to the GDP. And this is all private investment. This isn't, federal tax dollars that's coming to fund it. So I think it fits in very nicely with the message that you were just talking about earlier. And I want to make sure we get that over to you and your staff so that you have that available.
Great.
One of the questions I had, because you did mention different pieces of legislation, what do you think the prospects are for an overall energy reform plan for the country over the next couple of years? And what do you see as the stumbling blocks for some type of a comprehensive energy legislation or energy plan?
Well, I'd love to see a bipartisan approach. As I mentioned, the Energy and Commerce Committee has this history, a culture of really going to work on some of the most difficult issues. And if there ever were a time for the members on both sides of the aisle to come together, it's now. And I believe that we would get a better outcome. Unfortunately, the start to this Congress has been a pretty partisan, has been a pretty polarized start. COVID has not helped that. Virtual hearings and virtual markups have not helped that because it just is further broke down the communication and the legislative process. I don't know that I fully appreciated how valuable, just side conversations during a committee hearing can be, or being able to see each other walking across the street to votes. Now, I understand, or what they told us this morning is that they plan to open up the hearings when we get back after the Memorial Day break. So that's good news. My sense is that Speaker Pelosi is really driving the train on a lot of these issues, and at least so far, it's been more of a take it or leave it approach by the speaker. Now, the president continues to bring down members from both parties. And so I hope that approach wins out in the end, because as I said, I think that will lead to a better outcome. And I do not want to see the California example become the national approach that perhaps Speaker Pelosi is promoting. So, we're going to continue to work wherever we can. We're going to continue to promote solutions and find that common ground that's going to lead to a better outcome, and make sure that we have the ability to meet our continued energy needs in an affordable and reliable way.
I always think one of the challenges with a federal action is how does it intersect and how does it interplay with the state actions that are going on? As you know, to the extent that the federal government might take some action, you've got states with some states have clean power mandates, clean energy mandates, others do not. How do you bridge that divide between what the federal government is looking for and then what all the various states are looking for when they're all playing in the same sandbox?
Yes, well, that's a great question, and certainly we've seen the Texas example most recently, where the grid and energy needs were not, it was completely shut down, and just a devastating emergency that took place in Texas. And we've seen where California also has had its challenges with affordability and reliability. I guess from my perspective, it just underscores the importance of an all-the-above approach to energy that needs to be fundamental to meeting our energy needs and supporting our electric grid. So that's one. And I also think that it just underscores that we need to be aware. I know that there's this big push to rush to green, and some pretty aggressive mandates and goals that are being put forward. But we really need to look at the realistic implementation and make sure that we are taking affordability and reliability into account. So whether it's Texas or California, it's clear that we still have work to do.
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up on the point you were making about Texas and California. It really highlights the resilience challenges that the country faces with respect to its energy infrastructure. I'm just curious as to what are your thoughts on how transmission can be part of helping to mitigate some of the challenges that we see with resilience in the aftermath of events like we've seen in Texas and then previously in California as well.
Well, transmission is just key, right? It's that's the foundation to being able to ensure that we have energy reliability, and so I think that addressing the transmission questions, I really would like to hear more from you. I understand many of you are experts or have spent time at FERC and have been working on these issues, and when it comes to reliability, being able to have transmission lines that can meet the need, and whether, in Washington State, I certainly know it from, we have a lot of hydro, but we're trying to, add the wind and the solar and transmission on the West Coast. So I'd love to hear, what you think needs to be happening. We always have the challenges with the permitting, eminent domain, public participation when it comes to making sure that we have transmission lines in place.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit on one of the biggest challenges that we see from our perspective, which is the permitting and siting issues, which tend to be a big contributor to the delays in getting transmission built, and in some instances, it prevents it from getting built. And that's an area we've been working on for quite a while. I know Congress has looked at this in the past, going back to the Energy Policy Act of 2005. There was a provision put in there to try to give Department of Energy some authority to provide for corridors to try to help expedite the process. There was some litigation surrounding that. It never really got off the ground. I guess one of the questions I have is, do you think there's any room for Congress at some point to visit issues surrounding permitting and siting? I know that because of the politics around those types of issues, it can be some of the toughest to try to deal with, but they are also some of the most intractable in terms of getting this kind of really important infrastructure built. So just curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Well, it's you know, I think absolutely, it needs to be on the table. We need to be looking at what it's going to take to make sure that we have the transmission available and energy reliability. So with that, I have worked on permitting issues through the years, or trying to improve processes. You know, when I was a young state rep, actually in my freshman term, I was on the resources committee and asked to chair a task force to update our NEPA laws. You know, it's going back a ways now, but I really learned a lot as we traveled the country. I was co-chairing it with Tom Udall at the time out of New Mexico. He was the Democrat lead, and boy, and it's so much easier said than done. But I think it goes to how we take for granted. You know, we take for granted that transmission is going to work, that it's going to be available, that we're going to be able to integrate all these different sources of electricity into the grid, and it doesn't just happen. So we need to look at how are we going to make sure that we have transmission available to meet our needs, and certainly, you know, I'm open to hearing suggestions from a federal perspective to help make that happen.
Well, great. You know, I know you're one of your areas of expertise, in particular, given your district that you come from, is hydropower issues. Just curious, what do you see as the big hydropower issues that we're going to be facing over the next couple of years?
From a hydropower perspective, we need to address the licensing again, the permitting and licensing of hydropower electric projects. It takes on average 10 years in America to relicense a hydroelectric project, and you compare that to natural gas, which is 18 months. We can do better, and we need to do better. So I've been working and advancing legislation that would streamline the permitting process for hydroelectric projects. It's been tough. It's despite the fact that this is clean, renewable, reliable, affordable electricity. We have some of the lowest electricity rates in the country. 70% of our electricity in Washington State is from hydro. And we're also really improving the fish passages on these dams also, and proving that fish and dams can coexist, which is, again, it's American ingenuity and technology improving fish ladders and turbines at the dams. But this is just one example where we need to look at how do we make sure that this is available. You know, only 3% of the dams in America actually produce electricity. So again, we have we have a lot of infrastructure and potential to double hydroelectricity, clean, renewable, reliable, affordable electricity without even building a new dam. So that's where we really need to look at the permitting and the regulatory processes that often are a barrier to clean energy sources.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier, shifting gears a bit, you mentioned earlier the recent Colonial Pipeline situation, which really exposed a vulnerability in that area with respect to cybersecurity. And of course, there's the potential for that in all other areas, not just there, but natural gas pipelines, the electricity grid, even water as well. How concerned are you about the potential for additional incidents like that to happen elsewhere within our energy or critical infrastructure? And what are your thoughts in terms of what should Congress start doing about those types of vulnerabilities?
Right. Well, without a doubt, the Colonial Pipeline and the cyber attack and shutting down that pipeline was just devastating. We must take action, and it really highlighted how these, it highlighted to the country that these pipelines, how critical they are to moving product and meeting and supplying our needs. So that's, I think, important as we move forward, as we think about pipelines and how we, that it's not transmission, but again, it's moving product around. Fred Upton has introduced legislation, and we're also working to get a classified briefing on the Colonial Pipeline so that we can just really better understand where, how this happened and where the vulnerabilities are. We can learn from this and apply it to other pipelines and critical infrastructure, because this is a way that, boy, people can cause a lot of harm and disrupt our lives and wreak havoc. So we're continuing to learn, but without a doubt, cyber attacks are only increasing, and it underscores the importance of us taking action so that we can protect critical infrastructure and really looking at how we address these cyber attacks. So there's going to be a lot more on this, I suspect. We have the secretary coming in this week. The Secretary Granholm is going to be in front of the committee, and I know this is going to be a big topic of conversation.
So I'm starting to get a couple questions in, and I know we're getting close to the end, but let me run through a couple of those real quick if I can.
Sure.
One is it that there are many in the current administration and at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that equate renewable integration with massively overhauling transmission planning and more oversight by the government. And the question is, how do you weigh that with the ability of companies and utilities to manage their own systems, their existing systems, and find ways to ensure resilience of the grid? So you've got the two competing interests, and we're trying to figure out how do you thread that needle, basically. Do you have any thoughts on?
Well, I think I should ask the person who asked me the question what he or she thinks. Well, how do we address this? Is that possible, or is that not?
Well, I think there are some concerns, I guess, basically
without a doubt.
About when you participate in the regional transmission organizations, the RTOs, you turn over your system to them to manage, and you lose that control. Yet you still have responsibilities at the same time. So I know that there are some concerns from the transmission owners, the utilities, about how they go about weighing that. And I think part of it is just the pace of the change. And whether they fully understand, I think, some of the challenges coming at it from the ones who own the assets, basically, as you're trying to reach some of these other goals that are out there. And I think there's some real concerns about that. So I think we would urge, careful consideration of both sides of the equation when those types of changes are going forward. So.
That's good. I agree, and it underscores the importance of an all of the above approach. That if we become too focused on wind generation and when the wind isn't blowing, how are we going to maintain reliability, or the sun isn't shining? And it's important to baseload. That's part of why hydro has been so foundational in Washington State, is because it's that critical base load, and it's a nice marriage then with wind and solar. It's easy to turn it on when it's needed, but we absolutely need to, as we move forward and embrace a clean energy future, make sure that we are taking steps to protect energy reliability in the process.
Well, another question that came up goes back to some of your earlier comments, where you recognize that with all of these changes, with these policies moving forward, there's going to need to be a lot of additional infrastructure, and frankly, some of that's going to be transmission in order to accommodate all of the things like electrification, clean energy mandates, trying to build a more resilient grid. All of those things are going to require more investment in transmission. No question about it. Part of the question they're looking at is how would an agency like FERC or elsewhere in the federal government provide incentives to get all of this transmission built that's going to be needed over the course of the next couple of decades, frankly. Congress did put in place an Energy Policy Act of 2005, some incentives provisions. FERC has tinkered with those over the years. And frankly, of late is sending some fairly mixed signals that we're concerned about. But I think we'd be happy to educate you or your staff further on those at some point. But I mean, they're just looking at what are the ways to get all of this. It's a lot of infrastructure you're looking at. How do we go about doing that?
Well, it's a great question, and I think it only underscores the importance of us really asking some of these questions and diving deeper into these realities before rushing to pass legislation. Because I'm especially concerned that the rush to green, when you consider wind, solar, and batteries, and also a dependence upon China, they control that renewable infrastructure. It's important that we are developing strong, it's important that we are building American infrastructure and not becoming dangerously dependent upon China. And as far as transmission in particular, it absolutely is part of what we should be looking at in an infrastructure package, right? Is figuring out how are we going to make sure that we can keep the lights on and do it in an affordable way. Energy has been our competitive advantage as a country. It is driven our economy. It's key to our national security, and I believe that affordability and reliability must be maintained as we move forward, and that it can be. That we need to move forward. We're embracing this clean energy future, but let's do it in a way that's going to make sure that America is strong and not rushing to green, and not, we need to take time to understand, make sure that we're taking step-by-step approach, and also not rush so fast that we are dependent upon China in a dangerous way.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today and hear some of our points of view on these issues. It was great hearing your perspective. I want to thank you again, Ranking Member McMorris Rodgers, for visiting with us.
Thank you.
We really look forward to having some more dialogue with you on these issues down the road. So thank you again.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. I hope to see you soon in person.
Great. Thank you very much. And
take care.
Thanks everybody else for attending today's webinar series. And that's a wrap for this one.
That's a wrap. All right. Take care.